Welcome back to the podcast. Today's topic is inflammation, and we are taking a deep dive into how it's understood through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine. My name is Dr. Pamela, TCM specialist, and join me today, Dr. Erin, fertility coach, TCM specialist, and someone that I love to have conversation with, especially in this topic, inflammations. Welcome back, Dr. Erin.
Hello, thank you.
Perfect. So let's dive in. It's kind of like a buzzword in traditional Chinese medicine, but not only in traditional Chinese medicine, it's also in daily life. Like we always hear this a lot when patient comes in. They will tell you, oh, I have this inflammation. But the way that we view inflammation in traditional Chinese medicine, we talk about the heat, the stagnation, and deficiency. Can you elaborate that, Dr. Erin?
So I think the first thing to say is that if you go back in time, like your anatomy textbook from years ago, and look at pictures of inflammation, what you see is a picture of something that is red, swollen, hot to the touch, and angry. If you think about a bee sting, right? The toxin of the bee sting makes this big red bump and it's hot and it's all these things. That's what traditionally was known as inflammation. But over time, we've kind of readapted the word and sort of thinned it out so that anything that is uncomfortable or doesn't work right or doesn't seem to be behaving is now inflamed. People say they feel inflamed. My doctor says I have, there's all these things. And it's not really telling us anything of value because most of the time, when you look for the treatment, what we're seeing in the patient's body doesn't really match hot, red, swollen, and all those things. So I think the Chinese medicine way of looking at it does a little bit more of a better job of giving us some different concepts of what might be going on so that we can figure out how to treat what might be going on.
So normally we divide them into two groups. There is an excess inflammation, kind of excess inflammation type, which is like more heat, but there is a deficiency type inflammation. So we have the excess inflammation. You can see all this redness. For example, rashes, all red. And then, of course, we have to find out what else that support the heat in the body. Sometimes you just look at the tongue is red. The other part of it, the deficient type of inflammation, this patient has the skin presentation as well, rashes, but when you look at their tongue, is pale. So this is how we distinguish this both of this presentation. But moving forward, so let's talk about inflammation when it presented in the heat. Can you elaborate that, Dr. Erin?
That is what we were just talking about. When we say heat in Chinese medicine, that's what we're describing. Something that is on fire, right? Something that has a temperature that's too high compared to what it really should be. So you can think about it in terms of like something local, right? So, you have a shoulder injury and it's big and swollen and red and inflamed. That's a true heat presentation. You can see it in a person. If you think about, kind of your classic hot, angry, red-faced
Yeah.
person with high blood pressure, and
Yeah.
you just kind of look at them and think, boy, they look really like red and irritated.
And they
So,
complain of shingle.
yeah,
Yes. Uh-huh.
yeah,
That's inflammation.
correct. And
Heat.
that's like the obvious inflamed body, right?
Yes.
But that's not necessarily what we see when people come in and say, I have inflammation. Very few of them actually have that look about them. So we're starting to talk about inflammation as something other than heat.
Yes. So that's the excess side, which Erin just mentioned. But on the deficiency side, think of it like you driving a car on the highway and suddenly you heard that beep, beep, beep. Oh my God, the fuel is low. Or you forgot to fill up your one of the fluid, and then suddenly you see smoke on the engine. So that's literally heat from deficiency, meaning you don't have anything to support the body, right? And then suddenly it just like give a red indication that you are on something.
Mhm.
So that's another view. You know, we have to distinguish which one which when we like treat the patient. So moving forward from the heat presentation, excess and deficiency, this leads to discussion about stagnation.
Mhm.
So tell us more about that, Dr. Erin.
Stagnation is the whole Chinese medicine concept says that our, for lack of a better word, our energy and our blood should be circulating around our body and it should be moving freely and smoothly all the time, right? In these really beautiful timelines. Stagnation is when either of those, the chi, the blood, the energy, or both, are starting to not flow so well. So they might be slowing down, they could be getting stuck somewhere. It's just this idea that now there is something blocking the flow. And what you get is this buildup of energy or blood or whatever we're talking about, where it's creating some pressure and it's creating some distress in terms of like there's discomfort there because instead of having that nice easy rhythm,
Mhm.
there's a problem, a kink in the system.
Yes, and usual words used by normal people, it's lymphatic blockages, or like, oh, I have like problem with my lymphatic drainage or whatever it is. And again, do you think stagnation or build up lymphatic has to do with the occurrence of tumor, fibroid, or cancer? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's like classic Chinese medicine. When things can't flow and they get stuck in one spot, they start to accumulate. And so, what isn't a tumor? You know, it's an accumulation of blood and chi and tissue and all these other things. So, the longer that something is constrained and stuck in an area, the more capable it is to become a physical object, to become a tumor or a mass or a bone spur or any other thing. I mean, we talk about constipation. It's not good
Yes,
flow, right? Like your gut
yes.
aren't flowing freely, and then you get bowel obstruction. So there's so many ways for us to visualize the whole concept of stagnation, and like it's not so hard for people to understand.
Mhm. So there is this other concept in Chinese medicine, emotion can slow down the movement of qi. So how do you explain this one in terms of stagnation? Does it affect the stagnation of the body just like because you stress, you are sad, you have, too much thing in your daily life? How do you explain this?
Yeah, I love this one. I love to talk about it in terms of people that say like my neck and shoulders, you know, like I'm so tight and I'm so stuck and I can't move and I can't get comfortable and they're describing emotional stagnation, right? They have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They've got all these things in their head, and they're all in this mental emotional space. And so that energy, that emotional energy, is not circulating anymore. And it's all building up in the upper body. And then people are like, I just can't get comfortable. And most of the time, it is very emotional.
Yep. Yeah, same thing like, well, this is based on my observation, especially breast cancer patients, because the liver meridian goes on the chest, the stomach meridian goes on the chest, right? Most of the time, when, especially in women, they get liver qi stagnation because that's part of the hormone as well. And then when you unable to regulate the liver qi properly, that's some type of buildup as well around the chest area, which basically support the role of stagnation in Chinese medicine,
Yeah.
right? All right, so let's move forward to deficiency and chronic inflammation. So I see this pattern a lot in autoimmune disorder, right? So can you tell us more about this?
So, deficiency is the idea that there's not enough of something or multiple somethings. But deficiency is, let's give it some tangible anemia. You
Yes.
don't have enough iron.
Mhm.
Uh, Somebody might have a B vitamin deficiency. So there are these things that or that are measurable, and you can say like there's not enough of this thing in the body, and as a result, you're having these symptoms. So deficiency, what's interesting about it, Chinese medicine, is that it can be the cause of the stagnation and the inflammation, or the result of the stagnation and the inflammation. So one of the nice things about Chinese medicine is that it doesn't really matter. We don't have to work so hard on who did what to whom. You just recognize that there's not enough of this, and this is really stuck, and this is getting hot, and the pressure's building up as a result, and you can just fix all three.
Excellent. So even if someone's inflammations looks like heat, it rooted in deficiency. So we cannot just clear the heat. We have to rebuild the constitution in order for us to remove the heat, right?
Menopause is the classic example, right?
What
The
is that again?
menopause.
Yes, yes.
Right. The estrogen of the body is kind of the cooling, nourishing substance that
Mhm.
makes women feel pretty. And that's declining. And it's like the coolant in the car, like you were talking about. And then you
Exactly.
have this big heat eruption as a result. But it's not the heat's fault. It's because you don't have those cooling substances, like you said. And so you want to do both. You want to calm the heat down, but you really want to restore some of that cooling energy in the body, and then it'll naturally soften that heat.
Yes, I agree with you. All right, moving forward, let's move forward to another type of inflammation. So, since we are in the spring season, people always say, "Oh, I have this inflammation because of my allergy." How do you like explain this?
So, in Chinese medicine, we have kind of like an energy field, a protective barrier around the external part of the body. One of our chi mechanisms in the Western world, you might kind of think about the immune system, our body's ability to interact with our environment.
Mhm.
And so, in the Chinese medicine way, one of the reasons that we have allergies is that system that runs around and cleans everything up and gets rid of everything really effectively has been compromised in some way. And so, those external guys that are out in the environment can come in and they can get into us and cause an inflammatory response as a result. So, that's one way that we see that's really common with allergies.
Yes. And then the type of inflammation is different with everybody. If we look at two people, right, the other one have a good response on the environment, the pollen and everything. The other one probably keeps sneezing because of the pollen. So we can safely say the first one have a good flow of qi, the second one doesn't have a good flow of qi. All
Mhm.
right, that's how we look allergies in it as part of the inflammation in traditional Chinese medicines. All right, moving forward, this is our favorite segment, food for the pattern. So we already discussed about the inflammation due to heat, stagnation, and deficiency. So Dr. Erin, can you tell us what type of food that somebody can eat when they have heat-based inflammation?
So it's really simple. It's one of the best parts about Chinese medicine is the language just makes it really easy. So if something is hot and red and inflamed, you want to cool it down and let the heat out. So we talk about food as a temperature. So cooling foods would be literally things that when you eat them, they make you feel cool. So think summer foods,
Mm-hmm.
watermelon, cucumber, and mint, and green, fresh things that help circulate your energy. Those things are all going to naturally cool down the body and the internal temperatures.
So I always have to make an arrangement for patient that loves to eat meat. Okay, some of these people, they say, I cannot eat all these vegetables. So you just have to make an arrangement. All right, you probably eat like vegetable, like cooling food 3 days a week, and then the rest of the days you eat meat. You eat your barbecue or whatsoever. At least you are helping your body to reduce the inflammation, right? Yeah, so for stagnation,
Coleslaw with your barbecue.
yes.
Like
What
put
is
some
that?
cabbage with your barbecue and then it'll
That's
help.
right. So what about stagnation?
Uh,
Inflammation type stagnation.
yeah, well, and of course it goes back to vegetables like you were saying.
Yes.
Things that help the liver energy and the liver chi circulate. So the green leafy vegetables that reach up to the sky are kind of the notorious anti-stagnation vegetables. Those would be my go-to. Anything that's green and leafy is a good.
Yes. Yes. And I also encourage those that prone to stagnation, you just have to make an effort to just walk 5 to 10 minutes at your backyard, just to move the chi. So it's literally you're gonna feel better instead of like after eating, you just sit on your couch, you're gonna feel miserable. And then that's when you feel like, oh my God, I got stomach acid. I got acid reflux. I have this ulcer. And then you keep taking all this medication without changing your lifestyle. It's not gonna, you're not gonna get any result because you're still not fixing the real problem, right?
And I also like to add, if you have like stuck energy, you don't want to eat a lot of sticky food either. Like
Oh,
the whole
yes.
idea is we want to get things moving.
Mm-hmm.
So foods that are like function like glue, we don't want to eat so much of those. So
Mm-hmm.
melty cheese that makes everything stick together, that slows your energy down. Peanut butter, it's sticky and gooey. We don't want to eat so much of that. Bananas, any of those things that have a lot of stickiness to them are energy slower downers.
That's right. All right. So the last one is the deficiency. This is the autoimmune disorder, hypothyroid type of people. So what type of food that is good for them?
My go-to for everybody is broth, bone broth
That's
especially.
right. Yes, me
It
too.
has
Yes.
every mineral in it. You're taking the minerals out of one form and you're exchanging them into a new form so that you can take them into your body. So bone broth of all kinds is a gift. And then things that I always tell people too, I love anything that is a sprouted seed or grain or nut because it's the transformation from dormant into alive, right? So if you
Yes.
plant a seed and it's starting to sprout, it's like that perfect place where not moving is becoming movement. And so to me, those are the pure embodiment of energy. So sprouts and seeds, any of those, the little microgreens that are just getting started and they're real tender and delicate, all of those things are very nourishing to proliferating energy.
Yes, perfect. All right. So moving forward for the next segment. So we were talking about inflammation. Now we have to connect this information to fertility. All
Mhm.
right. Before we wrapped up, we try to see the connection fertility and inflammation.
So we have these fertility issues, things like endometriosis and these kind of female conditions, PCOS, where there is a lot of inflammation in the body. And they do often show up in that real true heat pattern.
Yes.
So that, if you think about if there's too much heat in the uterus, the baby can't grow very well. Like there's too much sun and not enough moisture or, whatever combination. But it's just that concept that the body temperature needs to be just right to help life grow. So we want to monitor the heat state so that we don't overdo it and make
Yes.
it hard for the baby.
And also the case of recurrent miscarriages. That's the inflammation due to deficiency. So it's good to nourish Qi and blood, eat more meat, iron. If you're vegetarian, you might have to change a little bit to increase more of the blood production so you can hold the baby into a pregnancy. All right. So it's all about the quality of the internal environment. So baby don't just like want to stay there if it is too hot, too cold, or too deficient. They kind of like they're picky. They choose you because you have a good room for them to grow. That's the reason why you are able to conceive or receive the pregnancy. All right. So before we close, we would like to ask Dr. Erin to give us 3 unconventional tips to help us reduce inflammation.
So, okay, one of my tips is going to be I just don't think a turmeric supplement is for everybody in the world. I just
I
really don't.
agree.
You see it everywhere nowadays and everybody's on it, but it actually can really inhibit the wrong thing if you're taking it for inflammation, which we don't really know that you have. So that would be one of mine. Eating a good mixed diet. I think we tend to think with the Western medicine, what we think of as healthy is a lot of that cooling diet that we were talking about, a lot of raw stuff, a lot of, fresh vegetables, but that can also be too much cooling in the body. We're always kind of focused on that. So lightening up on that and making sure you're having cooked food as well as some of that cooling food, not just one or the other. And not too much exercise. People
That's
tend to think that more exercise is the answer. And for a lot of us, you want to move, but you don't want to get into that exercise endurance state that really kind of puts your body in a stress mode. So tamping it down is actually what's good for a lot of people, not doing more.
I love that. Yes, simple, powerful, and rooted in traditional Chinese medicine wisdom. And yeah, we all need that. And thank you so much for this rich conversation, Dr. Erin. And we hope you subscribe to our channel. And we shall see you in the next podcast with Dr. Erin.
All right, see you soon.